Welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast, a Ben Kinney training production, where we discuss the concepts of health, wealth, leadership, and legacy. My name is Chad Hyams, and I'm joined as always by my friend Bob Stewart. Hi, Bob.
Chad, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. You know, Bob, usually I come to you for the word of the day.
I'm all out of them, man. I don't have any words left. You got one?
I've got it for this one because you had a great conversation with Ben, and to me, that word was relationship. And it's really interesting as I was listening to this one about how many of our regrets come from relationships. Yeah. And I don't want to dive into it too much. I want to save my feelings on that until the end of this because I want the audience to get the chance to hear this conversation you had with Ben. Yet, what is it you want to have them paying attention to as they go through this conversation with the two of you?
At the very end of the day, it ends up being like, you're going to have regrets, but there's a path past those regrets, right? So that like, you know, as you're sitting in retirement and looking back at your life and the regrets are gone, right? There's a way to get rid of those regrets. You have them and you deal with things throughout, you know, the course of a life that end up where you regretted it, but you can actually like get rid of them, get rid of the regrets. And so it's a great conversation. I think there's a lot of emotional intelligence wrapped into today's talk.
There sure is. And Ben really opens up, I think, during this conversation as well. So let's hear you and Ben talking about regrets.
Ben, I've heard you say a couple of times you want to live a life with no regrets. But, I mean, we all have regrets, right? So what are some of your biggest regrets?
It's a good question. It's an interesting question. It's a timely question. Today is actually the 4-year anniversary of my mom dying 4 years ago today. And I remember getting the call from my sister, and she said, Mom's not answering her phone. Nobody can get a hold of her. We're sending our cousin over there to check. I'm driving that way. And it was pretty uncommon for my mom to not answer a phone call. So I jumped in my car. You know, I live about an hour away from where my mom resided, and I jumped in the car and I just started driving south. And I got about halfway there, and my sister called, and she said, Mom's gone. And you don't ever really imagine a life without your mom or your dad there, right? It's not something that you think about. It was just the week before, as I was driving up and down the freeway, I thought I should stop and see my mom. But you all these things run through your head like, I'm busy. If I stop, I'm going to get stuck in traffic, right? And then you pass that opportunity. And you think about these people that are important to you, or if you were to make a list, Bob, and say, these are the most important people in my life. If I was to go back and ask you, show me on your calendar, how do those most important people show up, right? Are they actually on there? And for some of us, maybe our top 1 or 2 is, but you know, your spouse or your kids, right? You're living with them or whatever, but maybe your mom or your dad doesn't make it. And my mom was a bad alcoholic and a drug user and pill user, and but she was a good mom. I mean, I loved her, and but she was such a bad alcoholic. By 1 p.m. every day, she was talking about how bad of a mom she was because she was drunk, and then she would start talking about things like killing herself, or you know, go and be this unraveling chaos of drunk, you know, conversations. I know that I couldn't change that part of my mom, that her disease was unsolvable. But one of my biggest regrets is not making time before noon or before 1 p.m. for the people that I say are most important to myself. And as I go through my long list of regrets in my life, and we all have them, Bob, most of it has to do with relationships that are broken, relationships that are unresolved, relationships that ended that really didn't have to, when the word regrets go through your mind, what pops into it for you?
I mean, relationships are definitely up there, right? I think, look, like, you might think of that, that investment you didn't get to make, or that opportunity financially, but the reality is those things can all be recaptured. You get another shot at them. They show up some different way in your life, maybe. But I mean, when when you talk people, those things are hard to. You can't recreate that time when you could have had with your mom, for example, right? Or you can't recreate. I think we always think like, oh, I can do that next week. I can do that tomorrow. I can do that whenever. Well, so if I mean, a lot of my regrets are around relationships. Probably relationships I shouldn't have ever been in to begin with. Relationships where there was many red flags along the way until that thing ultimately blew up, right? Or relationships that, man, I was the reason that thing went sideways, right? But so if, let's say, relationships have been a theme of regret, what do you do? Like, how do you avoid that? Do you just avoid those relationships? Do you, set different expectations going in? Like, how do you approach relationships kind of realizing that regret has been generally based around relationships in your life?
Most of us are ill prepared for handling relationship-based conflicts, or we're too immature to resolve them, or we don't like conflict, so we put it on the sidelines and we don't ever say that thing until it becomes a big issue. What actually happens is a scratch becomes infected, and the infection expands and it takes over until it ultimately kills
Cut your arm off.
yeah, or kills your relationship. That infection is what I call resentment. Think about the word resentment as it being a wedge. A wedge is a powerful tool. Like if you were to get a wedge into a big piece of wood, like a log, right? And this small little wedge, if you continue to hammer it in there, it eventually splits that wood in half or into multiple pieces, right? Resentment is the wedge that splits and ends relationships. Now, if you were to take that wedge out of that log right away, it would have no impact. That the log would be intact. It'd be sturdy and as strong as ever. But the longer it sits in there and the further and deeper it gets, the more likely that it's going to end in a big implosion. And our job in business or at home or in our relationships is to control resentment. Now, you do that, Bob, by running quickly towards problems and trying to resolve it wholeheartedly so that you can just move on. We'll think about things like, my sister or myself, we could think of things that mom did to us that we never forgave her for. And yet it still sits in our hearts or our minds today as this thing, right? Whereas if we would have taken the time and energy to go up and say, hey, why'd this happen? Right? I forgive you. Get their perspective on those situations. Maybe we could have let it go. Resentment is a constant thief. If it continues to steal from your emotions, your energy, your happiness, your relationships, until you actually resolve it. And the only way to break these cycles of resentment is with forgiveness.
So, I mean, forgiveness, I think a lot of people think about forgiveness as like somebody comes to me and says, hey, I'm sorry. And I say, okay, I forgive you, right? Like I'm making this decision based on them asking for forgiveness. You have a little bit of a different take on forgiveness, right? Like your mom didn't have to come to you and say, hey, sorry for being, whatever, right? For you to forgive your mom. But like, talk to me about how you see forgiveness.
Forgiveness for me is even a little bit selfish. it allows me to let go of a situation. It allows me to remove a person from my heart or my mind so they can't continue to steal from me in perpetuity. It's how I either push them out of my life or push that situation out, because I just go up and I say, hey, Bob, I forgive you. We're good. We're 100% clear, right? And I have to mean it. You can't just say the words, you have to mean it. Now, most people say, well, I'm not going to apologize because they haven't apologized to me or because they haven't taken any ownership. They think forgiveness is a two-way street. It's not. You just picking up the phone and calling that mom or that sister or that long-lost friend, and you just call them up and you say a couple simple things. Number one, Bob, I would like to apologize for anything that I've ever done that caused us conflict or caused you to have resentment against me. And I know that I had to have done something. I'm an imperfect individual, and I can think of probably many things that I did, and I don't want to get into the details, but I want you to know that I am truly, wholeheartedly sorry. And no matter what that person says, my next statement is going to be, I also want you to know that I forgive you. That whatever you did, we're good. We're clear.
Real quick, what's funny is like if you did that to somebody and they don't like in turn have a similar kind of response, they're probably not a relationship worth saving, right? If they were like, what do you mean? You forgive me? I don't know, right? All of a sudden you're like, yeah, okay. I can let that go now.
But you notice the order I went in, right?
Yeah, you apologize first and then.
Yeah. When you apologize first, what do you think normally happens to the other person?
They're like, defense is down.
Yeah, and they start doing what?
Apologizing back or
saying, apologizing back.
Yeah.
And then you get to say, we're good, right? And that might be the last time you ever talk to that person. But at least they're no longer in your mind and they're no longer in your heart. And if they were to get sick and die or pass away or disappear or whatever, you know that you're good. Some of my biggest regrets have not been resolving these relationship issues that have sat out there because I wasn't big enough to say, I'm sorry, I know I contributed to something and that I forgive you. You know the story of one of the individuals that stole from us.
Yeah.
And when I caught this individual stealing from me, it's a timely episode because it was the day that I buried my mom, was the day that I caught him embezzling money. And I said three things to him. I said, I'm sorry for anything that I have done that made you feel justified in what you did. Because I had to have done something for
at
that
least
person.
In his head.
Yeah. Part of it's on me. It always is, right? And I apologize for it. Number two, I said, I forgive you. We're good. You don't even have to pay me back, right? Because I knew the fact on the third thing I said was going to be true, was I was going to go home that night. I was going to make a steak. I was going to eat something good. I was going to go to bed, right? I was going to wake up and I was going to live my life. Him, on the other hand, he was going to go home knowing that he lost his job and that he lost a friend and that relationship would no longer be there. But from my point of view, not only did I stop him stealing from me and my company, I stopped him stealing from me and my mind and my heart, and I was able to move on. And there's been very few times that I've thought about that situation other than educational purposes, right?
Yeah.
Because that person's no longer there, and I have no resentment left over, right? Go back and think about all the relationships, and maybe this is an exercise for our listeners. Make a list of people in your life where you have unresolved conflicts or unresolved issues. Send them a text, an email, or make a phone call and just say, hey, I want to apologize for anything that I ever did that might have caused these issues that we've had in the past. And I want you to know that no matter what happens, that I've forgiven you and I've moved on, and I hope you have an amazing rest of your life. And you never have to talk to him again.
Yeah.
Now, that comes back to thinking about, like, for instance, my mom. Even though I forgive my mom and I apologized, I wasn't willing to allow her substance abuse to continue to cause me conflict in my life. So what I did is I just put a time block up and said, in the afternoons, I'm not going to accept calls from mom because I know that she's going to be drunk. In the morning, the next day, I'll call her back and check on her. I'll go visit her early enough in the day that that's not an issue. So people sometimes also confuse forgiveness with allowing those people to come back into your life and do it again. No, you get to decide after you forgive somebody and after you apologize. Doesn't mean you ever have to talk to them again. This is about letting go.
But in some cases, like with your mom, you weren't just going to cut her out of your life. So you had to set boundaries, and you had to approach that situation after you've forgiven her, right? From just in a different way.
Yep. As we think about regrets, you illustrated it just like me, that our biggest regrets are probably relationships unresolved. And we've talked about controlling resentment as a way to stop these relationships of getting to that point in the future. And we've talked about forgiveness and apologizing, these things combined as a tool to resolve these outstanding relationships. So you never have to think about the person that's no longer with us, right? The only thing that we have left to talk about is generosity. Generosity can help with your regrets and with these unhealed relationships. But people get generosity confused just like they do forgiveness. Remember, we said forgiveness doesn't require the person to apologize back to you, right? It's a one-way thing. Generosity is the same thing. Generosity is not giving to your friend, right? Generosity is giving to your enemy and being okay with it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
When I think about generosity, I think people who give food to the food bank, but all they give is the shitty pumpkin pie mix and the olives in a can, right? Yeah. They don't give the good stuff. That's not really being generous. That's just giving away your crap.
I've heard you say in that it's generosity is giving the things, I don't forget exactly how you word it, but basically like giving something that you're just not comfortable to you, right? You get uncomfortable or you really couldn't even afford to give that thing, but you still gave it.
Yeah, generosity is giving your last dollar and borrowing 10 cents more to make it whole, right? It has to hurt. That's what being generous is, right? And for some of us, a dollar may hurt. That might be all we have, right? Sometimes generosity is us giving some time to somebody who doesn't really deserve it, or giving some forgiveness to somebody who doesn't really deserve it, right? Giving some money to somebody who's stolen from you or done things to you in the past, right? Generosity is another tool that you can use to minimize the amount of regrets that you have in your life.
So I started this by saying, I've heard you say that you want to live a life of no regrets. And it's not that you don't have regrets. It's that you're using things like forgiveness and generosity to basically mitigate those regrets that come up, right?
Yeah. I mean, we're guys. We have a bajillion regrets and mistakes and things that we've done and relationships that ended and friendships that went awry and whatever that might be, right? I'm just trying to minimize the amount of regrets that I have going forward and try to resolve as many past ones that are sitting out there. And we're going to do that through apologies, forgiveness,
and I'll tell
generosity.
I had recently had a really good friend. He was my roommate for many years. We were really close, and just a few things happened, and we probably spent the last 2 years. We didn't talk, and not because of you. I felt like I had a role in it. I'm like, it wasn't all me, but when I reached out to him, I led with, hey man, some stuff happened. We don't, just like you, and I'm sorry. He was like, yeah, man, some stuff happened with me too, and I'm sorry. And we've like rekindled that friendship in the last 3 or 4 months. That regret's gone, right? Like that regret's gone. So you have them, but you can take care of them.
In relationships, we put too much value on being right. And for anybody that ends up being successfully married, they will tell you that being right isn't the most important thing.
Yeah, this is like my ultimate downfall in my relationships, my personal, my intimate relationships. I have this stupid desire to want to be right.
And we try to prove everything logically, right? When the other side really wants to feel differently, right? And we'll learn these lessons as we go on. So my message for today is to live a life with no regrets, to resolve resentment as quickly as possible. And we'll teach you our tool called resentment circles in the future on how we do that, to give forgiveness and apologize as much as possible, and be generous to even your enemy. And let's see if we can live a little bit better life this year.
Good time for it.
All right, Bob, great conversation you just had with Ben. I said relationships going into it, and I think to me, it's just huge how so many regrets aren't really things.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, everybody's like, oh, I regretted that I never
bought Amazon at that price or whatever, right?
Or ran a marathon, climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. That's not really the regrets we usually end up with. The regrets are, I lost that time with my parents, or I had that friend growing up and we fell apart and our relationships fell apart.
Yeah.
And I think Ben does a great job of taking ownership of it and showing how we are responsible for preventing those regrets in our life.
Yeah.
What was your takeaway during the conversation?
I think, I mean, this one hits home with me a lot. Like I shared in that chat, like I literally just had this happen with somebody that, I mean, for probably a decade, I would have called one of my, two best friends in the world. And I think for me, like the idea that a lot of times forgiveness is given to people that don't necessarily deserve it, but it's not about them. Like that's a really powerful, I think, I was raised that like you gave forgiveness because somebody asked for it. And that's just not like, that then allows them to continue to rob from you if they never ask for forgiveness, right? And I think the way Ben kind of stands that on his head and says that he's going to, I'm going to give forgiveness whether they ask for it or not, and whether they deserve it or not, right? Which obviously bleeds into generosity, but it's a very, I think every single one of us, Chad, I mean, I'm assuming you're no exception. Every single one of us could look back and have some regret around a relationship that, even if we couldn't salvage that relationship, at least we can get that regret off of our heart and our mind. So I really enjoyed today's chat.
Yeah, thank you for having this conversation with Ben. I know it's going to impact a lot of people, and we hope that everybody's going through life with no regrets.
Yeah.
That you don't ever look back upon it, and that this episode helped you make those right choices. So remember, wherever you get your podcast from, to subscribe to the Win, Make, Give podcast. And we would love for you to share this episode, maybe with someone who you need to have a conversation with. You can always send them to winmakegive.com so that they can also have access to this episode. Until the next time, and as always, do good.